Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of the breakout sessions for Synergy 2017. Trust you've all had a great morning so far. Certainly there's been a lot of insights and education from a Suncorp perspective, but also with our keynotes to date. So I've certainly got a lot out of the morning session, and I hope you guys have as well. My name's Michael Iaconi. I'm the Regional Manager for Astron Life, and I wish you a very warm welcome to our afternoon. I must say, with this morning, there was certainly a lot of key takeaways for us, but the most important thing, and I think Andrew alluded to it earlier, is really providing you with a window into not only what we're doing from an intermediated perspective now, but also into the future. And that goes to the heart of the customer marketplace, technologies, but also some of the things you're going to hear about this afternoon around artificial intelligence. The good news is that the education doesn't stop now. In fact, the events team deliberately fed you on a diet of low GI lunch, except for some naughty snacks, which I did embark in. But that was just purely to increase your blood sugar levels. But ultimately, the low GI is to keep the brain switched on throughout the afternoon so that you can be actively involved in these sessions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Carl Vocker. Carl will run a session for us on artificial intelligence. Carl has travelled all the way from South Africa, Johannesburg, and is the founder of a company called Merlin, which is an artificial intelligence technology company. Carl's born out of a passion for robotics by Carl's uncle 10 years ago. Merlin is, as I mentioned, is based in Johannesburg and specialises in digitalised human intelligence. Digital intelligence is about getting computers to think and respond in much the same way as human beings do. Carl has partnered with Suncorp for the last 3 years. And he also has extensive experience and exposure in the financial services sector. In fact, we are currently using and demonstrating Carl's technology in property claims, and for all of you guys who haven't yet been out there in the Expo Centre, you're welcome to come and visually demonstrate and have a play with that this afternoon. Without any further ado, please welcome Carl Vocker to the stage.
Hi. Hello. Hello. Thanks. Have I got feedback? These should be off, yeah. Yeah, thank you for making the time. As mentioned earlier, name's Carl Vocker. I'm from a company called Merlin. And my objective today is just to take you a bit on the AI journey, give you a view of what's happening in terms of artificial intelligence, what is AI, why you should be very much aware of it, and then what are the threats and opportunities. So I'll cut to the chase, we're all going to die. Yeah, I've been told that I leave a lot of doom and gloom behind me after my presentation, so hopefully that's not the case. So I'm the founder of Merlin. I'm 50 years old now, I've got 5 children, I've never had a real job. My kids, if you ask any of them what I do for a living, none of them would be able to tell you. But they know that I'm involved I write software that does crazy things. So all my useful life, I've been chasing the concept of an artificial brain. It started many years ago when I thought about the problem that we have when you sort of touch a chair or bang your hand on the table, energy changes state. But when someone dies, what happens to that knowledge? Does it go to the ether? Where does this stuff go? So it's been a fascination. The philosophy around that has always been very fascinating for me. So in terms of my makeup, if you want to understand me better, it's about philosophy, psychology, and mathematics. And that's been a very good way for me to understand the world of artificial intelligence. So the original founding concept was around what happens when your great-great-grandfather dies? Where does that go? Now imagine building technologies that will allow me to capture that insight and make it available once they're no longer there. So that's the overall objective still. What we've done in the interim is advance the technology to a point where it does some of that stuff. And the technology was designed probably before the turn of the century. I took the technology to a couple of universities around the world. They said I'm crazy, but eventually some people decided to help me build the stuff, and we eventually got our AI working. Very big differentiator in terms of our technology is that if you look at mainstream artificial intelligence, it's about data mining. So those will be your Watson, Amelia type technologies, very powerful, amazing technologies, but they do data mining. So data mining is where you look at historical data and you learn things, you imply logic that you use tomorrow. My obsession, and I think it's the next generation of AI, is around using AI to mimic human expertise. So human expertise is, to an extent, a bias. It's that thing that sets you aside, that thing that allows you to be differentiated in the marketplace is human expertise. In fact, a good example, and I need to try and make it relevant to the discussion today, a very good example in your world is that as experts being able to give advice to your clients, you've got expertise that you offer. In fact, you've got expertise that I can't offer. You've got a better understanding of particular products, markets, and profiles of clients. So the very first opportunity, just to cut to the chase on one of them, and that's what you'll be looking for here, what's in it for us. There's an opportunity to take the thing that differentiates you, i.e. your expertise, and through the power of artificial intelligence, you're able to digitize or robotize that. So that means we've got the pieces right now which will allow you to create an app on your mobile phone or something on the web where I can go to a virtual you and ask advice. Now, the opportunity there is that what sets you aside is your individual expertise. So very often, smaller, mid-sized businesses, which I assume most of you are from, need to build abilities to scale. So what do you want to scale? You don't want to just scale transaction capability. You want to scale your expertise. So imagine an environment where you are able to offer advice to 1,000 clients all at the same time. So that's really what's available right now for you. I was saying earlier when we were chatting a bit before the presentation, I said, well, Suncorp's got the pieces to do that stuff now, so hopefully at the end of today you go and pressurize them because we're building that stuff right now. So the drive from my side is recognizing the value. Imagine a changed world where we can create access to our experts. Imagine having access to the top heart surgeon at the Mayo Clinic, or having access to the top marriage counselors, the top thinkers out there. So where mainstream AI is right now, it's about looking at data and learning things. I think the future is actually going to be robotizing our top thinkers. So imagine having a discussion with a virtual Deepak Chopra, or as I said, the top health clinicians, etc. And I'll speak a bit more about that during the slides. So our drive as Merlin is to support versus replace. Our technology is obsessed with supporting humanity versus replacing humanity. There's a lot of initiatives out there at the moment just about people losing their jobs, being replaced by robots. I think that's a short-term view. It's not a sustainable view, certainly in my opinion, for a number of different reasons. You'd have to buy me a beer and we can have a long discussion around that. Obsessed with risk. Our biggest area is in risk, so everything from financial risk to terrorist risk, human trafficking, drone warfare, all of those things. We love the space of risk. You're in the risk space. In fact, risk philosophically, we are all in risk because a technology like AI, the ultra technologies, is going to disrupt your world. It's busy disrupting your world. So by default, you're in risk already now. If you do nothing, you're at risk. If you make the wrong decision about this, you're at risk. If you do the right thing, you're in the opportunity space. So one of the themes that I'd really like to impress on you today is that you have to take a view on AI. You have to. The game's on, so you're already in play. It's coming to disrupt your industry. We are seeing that, and hopefully some of the discussion today will enforce that. Suncorp background, we met through a company called Eskom, who's our power utility in South Africa, who's very good at disrupting power. And they went to look at Eskom, and Eskom said, you've got to meet this crazy company that's doing these things for us. We built load shedders in Eskom. We built virtual nuclear scientists to decide how to maintain turbines and all those things. And I agreed to come to Suncorp if we could do something practical. So a couple of years ago, we started doing some really crazy things. And some of that is now manifesting as per the display outside. So, music. That music, incidentally, and I'll cut to the chase on that as well, was composed by a computer. I have a partner in the business, or an implementation partner of our technology, who in his other life writes symphonies and concerts and things. And I sent that piece of music to him, and he phoned me and said it's the most beautiful, emotive music. It really touched his soul and all that stuff. And then I told him, well, the engine that wrote 1,000 of those in the last minute. So he was really, really depressed after that. Yeah. So AI has got the ability to challenge our humanity. In the laboratories out there now, every single conceivable emotion that you can feel, from near-death expression of emotions, the ecstasy emotions, all of those things have already been simulated in the laboratory environment. So, and using the AI technologies, the sadness there is that we are being dehumanized to an extent. You know, if you go, I feel so good about this music, great, I'll give you great music. I feel so good about, potentially meeting God. I have the near-death experience. Good, I'll give you that. We can do everything now. The objective of AI is really to understand the world through algorithms. So I'd like to suggest to you, universal reality around AI is that the world comprises algorithms. Every single thing that moves is an algorithm. So from plants growing to the sea, to the way you drive your car, deciding on, driving here in 20 minutes versus 40 minutes, everything is algorithmically driven. So an algorithm is just very simple. This caused that. Those inputs caused that outcome. So if we look at the world and if we can understand that algorithmic, seeing the world through algorithmic eyes is valid, and it certainly is mathematically, then AI sets about to unravel all the algorithms that make us who we are. So even things like freedom of choice. Freedom of choice doesn't work anymore, unfortunately, because what we can see in the laboratory is that these inputs caused you to want to press button A versus B. So you think, well, I chose button A, B. No. We actually were able to manipulate your free thought and knew that you were going to make that decision. So free thought, and gets very philosophical. We can have a really good discussion around that. So essentially, AI has got the danger of making us totally divisible. We are going through the process of being broken down into our individual parts. So things like understanding customer will, the customer's response to a product, all of those things are being demystified at the moment. So patterns, algorithms, and we become divisible. The Siris, Bixbys of the world, I think everyone knows, there was a document published a little while back. After 300 likes, I don't use Facebook for a number of reasons, so I'm probably going to say the wrong thing. But after 300 likes or posts or whatever on Facebook, these engines know you better than what your spouse knows you. So this is true for just over 85% of the time, which is quite scary as well. So the next point that I make is around agriculture. So this was really interesting. Over the weekend, I've been here 2 weeks, and it's quite interesting. I'm not really missing home, which means I'm enjoying Australia. I hope you're not taping this. So the agricultural side, I was reading some of the academic research around that. So when the agricultural revolution happened, all these machines came in, and what was fascinating for me was the attitude of the farm workers. And the attitude of the farm workers was, boy, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to have so much spare time. And the reality is that they were wiped away. So in a lot of respects, when When I have a discussion, my neighbor is a banker in South Africa, and he absolutely hates technology. In fact, he's my oldest friend. He's like a stalker. He moved in next to me. I've known him since I was like 3 years old. He hates technology, and he says humans will find something else to do. So when you look at what happened in the agricultural space, very interesting. The attitude, there was so much excitement. We're going to be able to work far less time. It's going to be amazing. And what eventually happened was the thing of irrelevance. So one of the things that AI can potentially make you is irrelevant. You know, relevance is I suppose I spend most of my time in the philosophical space, and if you're no longer relevant, then you are lost to the economy, you lost to your relationships. Relevance is probably one of the most important things that you want to try and keep alive and guard. So when you look at disruptive technologies, certainly in the fintech space, you know, taking away people's relevance, that's a massive challenge. One of the questions I was asked where was I? In Sydney. And one of the questions was by a parent who said, well, I've got a 14-year-old who's thinking of, you know, what do they do as a vocation or career? And in light of what you've spoken to us, and I said, well, there's massive opportunities in supporting the delivery of AI technologies into all of these industries. I would be telling my kids, I've got 5 of them, I'd be telling them to look at opportunities in this space. There's massive opportunities. But the humanity drive, is it better for us and all of those things? That's by the way. It comes down to, are we still relevant? So the introduction, very simply, AI is about learning, planning, solving. I'd also at this point like to reinforce the concept of AI is not a scary thing. You cannot adopt a wait-and-see approach. Develop an opinion about it. AI is very, very logical. You've got some computational things happening in the background. You know, you can buy machine learning algorithms for the price of a hamburger now. You know, the mechanics in the background, the mathematics and that's really not the biggest thing that you want to be thinking about. You want to be thinking about how is this high transaction, complex environment, how is this going to change our industry? Where are the opportunities? Where are the risks? So logical approach is these inputs cause this outcome, and in terms of learning, it's, again, the logic is very simple. You create an anchor point, so if you were to tell me what a 20-year-old looks like and tell me what a 23-year-old looks like, then I'll be able to imply what the difference is in between them. So 21, 22 looks like this. It's a high-dimensional mathematical problem, so it's a bit more complex than that, but the logic is pretty much that. So why AI? Everything is now connected. So we're living in much more of a connected world. So what led to this, the beast, you know, the beast technology being built? There's now a need for more capacity from our people. And more capacity means people aren't going to cope anymore, so we need to start replacing a lot of what they do with technology, and then eventually leads to selecting AI technologies. So transactions that you're now involved in are now involved with more transactions. So if you're selling a product to a customer or client, you're ending up dealing with 100 different systems in the background, and the NSA is watching you, just by the way. So you have, you know, hundreds of these interlinked systems that are running where you thought you're just doing a very simple or committing a very simple transaction. So there's a need for more intelligence for the transactions to run smoothly. You, as being a participant to these transactions, need to have more intelligence around these transactions. There's a concept called asymmetrical risk, which I find fascinating as well. Now, asymmetrical risk is a military term originally, and it basically refers to, you know, I'm potentially going to make $1 out of this transaction, but I might get a $100 million fine for my efforts. So what you'll see out there with things like the regulators, there's a term, and I think it would be common here as well, called payment screening that we see in a couple of the banks that we deal with, where if I facilitate a transaction from a sanctioned entity, it could be an Iranian airline of all things, And it's a $1 transaction. And the regulator sees that I shouldn't have allowed that transaction to flow through my organization. Guess what? There's a $100 million fine. So the complexities around asymmetrical risk is that you think that you're only venturing $1 so I can lose $1. No, you're trying to earn 5 cents on the dollar, and guess what? You now have a massive risk profile. In fact, so much so that when you look at, and this is quite a scary concept, if you look at the complexity of transactions and how they're interlinked, you'll find that if you break the link of that 100 transaction or 100 sort of component transaction, you are going to be penalized for the entire value of that transaction. So there's huge risk on the horizon. So a lot of this, as mortgage brokers and the like and the intermediaries, you would think that this is not here yet for us, etc. But it's coming. If it's not yet knocking at your door, it's imminent. So you have to take a view on this. The competing objectives, which I find quite interesting with the regulators, where they have got an objective that needs to be fulfilled, and it's not necessarily aligned with what's happening in the commercial space. So I'm trying to make a profit out of a customer. The regulators, one that I saw recently, which I can't get my mind around it, it's called TCF. Has anyone heard of TCF? Oh, there we go. Who of you have never put your hands up before? You. Okay, you have now. Sorry, that was terrible. So TCF is treat customer fairly. So when I spoke to the regulator about that, I said, what does that mean? What are how do I understand that as a regulation? What are the guidelines and that? And it was so vague. They just said, if you get it wrong, you're going to get a fine. So things like that, where you have, the regulators bringing very complex paradigms into play, into the transactions. This, again, is a driver for the AI space. So the need to do more and consider more when doing it. This essentially leads to a human bottleneck. So any of the organizations that I see, and I'm talking about ultra-large organizations in the US being your NSAs, et cetera, of the world, where they have massively complex systems, all of these systems eventually end up at a human bottleneck. And what I mean by that is that when you have, one of our customers does around 10 billion transactions a year. A lot of these transactions flow, but when the flowing of these transactions is prescribed by logic. So if this happens, do the following. When these transactions, when the rules are broken, they are flagged. So in the NSA space, they'll see something and they'll go, that's a flagged transaction, there might be some activity. What happens? A human has to look at a transaction. In your environment as well, in the banking environment as well, you'll have transactions flowing. Transaction flows, something triggers a rule break, and it gets parked for a human assessor. These are human bottlenecks that are created, and you'll find in high volume environments, it's not a viable design to actually have these very complex high-flowing systems that have a need for human intervention. That's a primary landing site for AI. So what you do there is you create a robot that is able to make the same decision that a human expert would do in that regard. I'll give you a practical example. One of our banking customers, we monitor anti-money laundering, terrorist financing, human trafficking transactions for them. They flag thousands of transactions, you can imagine, per hour. They've got a team of 150 assessors who look to see whether a transaction should be cleared. So it's a false positive, so clear it, let it move on, or expedite it up into further assessment. So in those environments, in a 10 billion transaction environment, you cannot get to all the transactions. So the assessors only work on the ones that are, potentially really bad. So out of all of their transactions, they're looking at about half a percent of the transactions. What we've done is we've created robots out of their top assessors, where one of their top assessors will look at around 200 transactions a day. Our robots look at around 15,000 per second, with the same accuracy as a top assessor. So that's an example. You'll see human bottlenecks in organizations, claims management within Suncorp, bottlenecks, triaging, deciding where should the claim go, bottleneck. So those are environments that you can look at. First generation of AI is going to look like the following. It's going to replace the provider to support the consumer. Those are your DTMF type tones. You phone in, if you want to speak Mandarin, press 1, English, press 2, and all of those things. And then you get into a sort of a chatbot kind of environment. So that's replacing people who look after people with robots. That's version 1. Mainstream drive in AI is to replace as much human-operated repeatable process as possible. Replacement in the form of RPA technologies. I would imagine all of you, or some of you would have heard of RPA. RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. It's really a macro. So it says, open the email, read the number, and put it into this field. Very simple, very basic. So RPA technologies have been around for the last 20 years. The first gen is going to have RPA, NLP, natural language, OCR, optical character recognition, chatbots, and the like. But what they can't do, so they're very good at, for instance, everyone's heard about AI being used to read X-rays. So they're really good at that. So an AI engine will look at pixelation, look at patterns within pixelation. So pixelation is when you disassemble an image into grayscales and colors and things and patterns. And they're very good at, seeing potentially cancerous structures in X-rays and all of those things. But what they can't do is replace or mimic the complex relationship that exists between a teacher and a student. So where a teacher says, you know what, you need support. Is there stress at home? Are there things that worry you? AI, this is a massive stumbling block for AI. So to a certain extent, AI is going to come in and do a lot of RPA, replace people, but the complexity around the nuanced relationship, between a nurse and a patient, as an example, just knowing that there's discomfort and all of that, those are complex things. And in fact, our technology is squarely positioned to mimic or replicate that. So the bias, the subject matter expertise. Our absolute obsession has always been around creating something that's as imperfect as is our expert. So an example of this, we have built, and I'll speak about it a bit later, we have built a technology that is able to make end-of-life decisions. So there's a wonderful ICU technician in Rosebank Clinic in Johannesburg who makes decisions around when a patient is really struggling. So a great-great-granddad is struggling. You're making them suffer. These are real decisions that you can't openly acknowledge are being made, but they are being made. So, and the decision is around removing further care. Now, do you want a textbook to make a decision, or do you want someone who's got empathy? So I think the future, and that's why we've built our technology the way we have, is around building empathy and ethics into AI. That's where it gets interesting. So I always have got to talk about what happens potentially when AI goes wrong. So I've got 3 examples. One is Stuxnet. You might have heard about them. Stuxnet is really antiquated and quite feeble by today's standards. But essentially what it was a collaboration between the Israelis and the Americans. And the objective was to go after the Iranian enrichment plants. So enrichment process is like a tumble dryer that spins really fast and disassembles particles. And what happened, someone probably promised a naked picture of a camel or something like that. And it went into, I mustn't be that disrespectful. In fact, so someone promised something, and in it went on a memory stick. It was absorbed into the environment, and the objective was to find levers to spin these centrifuges. Really, the programming behind it was find a lever, test a lever, use a lever. So it went in, it did a really good job. It took out a lot of the centrifuges, but it eventually got out and ran across Europe and took out a lot of the Siemens PLC infrastructure as well, because they forgot to tell it to stop. As soon as you find something that speaks German, stop. So by today's standards, Stuxnet is really, as I said, infantile. So other things that happened that are quite interesting. The Dow Jones in 2010, which was also 100 years ago, lost $1 trillion when machine went against machine. So these are algorithmic traders, so we know about 80% of all trades, if not more, are machine to machine. So humans are standing by, probably keeping the power on for the machines, sort of getting in the way. But no one knows why these machines failed. So they lost $1 trillion. No one knows. Even now, a lot of time and effort is going behind what went wrong. So now we've created something that we are struggling to keep pace with what it did, why it did. 23rd of April 2013, the Syrians hit the Associated Press Twitter account, and they reported that Obama had been damaged. He was hurt or something. And immediately the algorithmic machines read that and dropped the value on the markets by $136 billion. These values came back, but it's quite interesting that, they say within 10 minutes of New York Times publishing something, it's been ingested by the AI machines, and they formed an opinion in terms of a trading approach. And these are very, very simple examples when you look at the complexity of really what's happening out there. So second generation AI, this is what I believe is going to be happening. So if it doesn't, sue me. Automation is now industry standard. I think everyone thinks AI is about high levels of automation. That's not entry level. So I want to impress on you as well that the concept of getting machines to open accounts and check values and all of that, that's entry level. That is now expected across all organizations. I think there's going to be an efficiency trade-off that's revisited. So what that means is that we managed to remove humans out of our call centers, and now people are dealing with robots. I think companies are going to come up and say, well, you know what, with ABC Insurer, that doesn't exist. With ABC Insurer, you actually deal with people. We will see things like empathy and ethics will start to come back, where people are, all right, that was standard, but where's differentiation? So if everyone's doing things faster, opening an account in 2 seconds and all those things, where's differentiation? So the differentiation will come by looking at the humanities within transactions. So the next thing, and this is really keeping the Silicon Valley guys very much awake at night. Everyone's talking about this, and by luck, I suppose, it's something that we have always developed towards. And that is empathy and ethics. So empathy and ethics is where you as intermediaries are positioned to take advantage of AI. Empathy and ethics, those are the things that set you aside in terms of your businesses. When you look at, and I'll talk about it in the next slide, the Lemonades of the world. Lemonade, do you guys all know Lemonade? So Lemonade is an insurance company, Israeli-based technology. They go and research them. They basically paid a claim out in less than 3 seconds. Some guy had his jacket stolen, walked outside, lodged a claim, and ding, his bank, the money was in his account. So what? Basically what happened was they used technology to enable speedy processing of a claim. But the decisioning around that claim, was it the right thing to pay it out or not? The triaging in that's where the differentiation will be. So they came in with a war chest and said, well, we'll just pay out everything really fast, everyone will be impressed. Now the CEO is starting to backtrack, where they're going, well, maybe it wasn't the right thing, maybe we need to think more about these things. So the way that you will meet the risk of a new broker or intermediary in the market is to outthink them. You can't outthink them in conventional sense by saying, well, I can think at one transaction every 5 minutes. You've got to use things like the AI technologies, which is what Suncorp's investing in and hopefully going to make available to you, where you can mobilize your intellect and do 1 million transactions a second if you need to. So the future in a Lemonade is going to be, you're going to meet that challenge head on by mobilizing your intellect. If you look at the intellect at a Suncorp, and we've seen them, people that have got 30 years of claims experience, if you robotize that experience, you can also pay out or not pay out a claim within 3 seconds. So I'll speak a bit about that in the next slide, so I won't go into it into too much depth now. But empathy and ethics are the absolute holy grail of AI. And when you look at the Google car problem, which person should I kill? These are, practical things. Sorry. But it is a practical consideration. I mean, a highly automated vehicle. Now, does the automated vehicle protect me, which makes me liable? In fact, I bought a new upgrade on my automated vehicle. It's aggressive. And I set a more aggression on my vehicle so it will survive anything. In fact, it will challenge, your Prius. In fact, at the moment, they're trying to get a lot of the government agencies to form an opinion on the Google problem. You cannot protect the person in the car because then you've weaponized your car. You have to give both parties a fair chance of survival, not prioritizing anyone. So these are all interesting dilemmas. But it's an empathy ethics decision. One of the projects, and I can give you, if you can somehow get my email address, I can give you some interesting reading which has now become available. We were asked to comment on the MIT and Duke AI warfare programs. And the MIT Duke guys make the logic that flies on top of these automated drones. So these automated drones are designed to engage a target in an automated fashion. So I will target someone, light them up, and go, they're obviously high-value target, and they will release ordnance on them. At a point, there could be an ethical decision. So I might have kids playing next door to this target. And at that point, what happens is the process stalls, someone gets called, do we, don't we, and was it the right decision, can you defend it, and all those things. So to actually have the ability to automate ethics within, if that can even be an ethical environment, but where you can create an ethical decision to help make that judgment call. So that's the future, and those are things that people are struggling with. A very important theme, again, is mobilization of organizational IP, your intellectual property. What differentiates you as a business, and it's the same for Suncorp, is not your technical infrastructure, your stores, your employees, and all of those things. It's actually your IP. That's what makes you very special. People come and go, but the essence, the secret sauce of the organization is in the intellectual property. And I firmly, firmly, firmly believe that the differentiation for you, because that's why you're here as well, to see what are the opportunities for you in the AI space, is around mobilizing your intellectual property and scaling it. Mobilize and scale. So mobilize it, what does that mean? That means I'm going to put it into a technology, an AI-based technology that thinks and responds the way I would, and then scale it. Make it available to 1 million people at once. Practical example would be, if I had to say to you, if you were customers of mine, I would say to you, what are the 20 key insights that you offer to your clients, so individually, to your clients, that they would phone you for in the middle of the night that you just can't get to, if only you could get to more of your clients. So let's say there's 20 key decisions. So one decision could be, is it time for me to switch products? Or is this the right product for me? Am I exposed? Yeah, so all insights that you guys have. Imagine being able to mobilize those insights into an app environment. So now you have this app that is actively watching your clients and imparting this wisdom, into your client base. So that technology, the pieces are there right now. So bias, a lot of my discussions and talks that I give, a lot of the discussion is around defending the concept of bias. Bias is not a bad thing. I'm biased. We all see bias as being, you're not part of the norm, so this must be wrong. Not being part of the norm is what sets you aside. So a bias could be understanding that a client's going to be in distress soon. So that product for them, even though they ticked all the boxes and they now can get product A, your instinct can be this product's not going to work for them. They're going to be in trouble. That is a bias. That's an early warning system, another military term. So an EWS, expertise is an EWS, early warning system. What I'm trying to open discussion around with Suncorp is to somehow mobilize the expertise that you guys have. I think it's going to help your your industry in the future, because I think your competitors are going to come from the likes of the Googles, Amazons of the world, and they don't have your experience. So imagine we meet them with this extreme experience that when the client looks at them, their traditional background, they are now processing fast versus empathy, caring, real client understanding. It will be a no match. So the threats, I mentioned Lemonade, so I'm going to move very quickly now. So Lemonade, very interesting, track them. They are just using technology to try and disrupt the industry. Technology as a barrier to entry there is no barrier to entry to your market anymore, because I can, for a couple of $100,000, I can be in competition as an insurer. So technology is very easy to come by and actually set up shop around the corner from you. What's going to differentiate you? I have 50 years experience in the industry as an insurer. You are coming with technology. Who do you think is going to win this game? You are able to do things faster. I'm able to, using the same technology, do things faster but cleverer. So business model relevance in high digital age, I think you've spoken a bit about that. The millennials, I think quite possibly, and I think it's true for your industry as well, I think that quite possibly your biggest competitor is your client, it's your customer. So think philosophically about that. They're trying to erode your value. They're trying to do what you do. They're trying to get to the products faster than what you do. It's an interesting concept to really think through. So unique configured risk, even in your environment, clients are going to look for risk that's uniquely configured. And what that means is that if you look at short-term insurance, insuring a car, we've got a lot of data, we give it to our actuaries, and they come up with a model that's viable. I think the future is going to be where clients are going to say to you, not you necessarily, but I want to take this product and move it. First week of January, it's a massive turbine. It's going to move 283 kilometers. Insure it for me. We have no data. What do? We give it to someone. So we have clients, insurers, who have got masses, walls of opportunity like that, which they give to individual underwriters. Individual underwriters have got to look at it because we have no data, so it must go to a human. We're robotizing those underwriters to a point where the robotic underwriter can go, no problem at all. This is totally unique. I can deal with this. In fact, I can write 1,000 proposals a second for you. So staying relevant to your client, I think, is another very key issue. So technology, what are the opportunities? And I'll just end off with a slide so that we can have some questions. Invest in people. I can't say this enough. It is the only sustainable differentiator for you is your people. And within that is the IP of the person. Your differentiation is going to be to outthink the competitors. The competitors are bringing robotic process automation, which is not very clever. If you were to mobilize your intelligence, I would bet on you each and every time. And we see this all over. Differentiate through scaled experience. That's really what I'm talking about. The opportunity for you as intermediaries. You need to look at opportunities to do more, and there's a difference. Do more of what you do. Do more of what differentiates you. That does not mean you do more of writing traditional things. What makes you special? What makes me special is the advice I give my client. Do more of that. How do you do that? Well, I've only got 10 hours a day. You can use AI as a way to robotize yourself. Then you've got a robotic version, a little helper, that is able to, as a proxy of the way you deal, is able to transact on your behalf. So I wrote a paper on that a while back, The Future of Employment, where we're going to build these things. The pieces are there. We can do it right now. Product design, flexibility, knowledge sharing. I think the industry needs to start sharing knowledge and start mobilizing around threats, external threats to the industry. I would love also to leave you with the concept of a fast learning organization. We have the ability to, into a market environment, to create fast learning, to drive a fast learning paradigm. And what that means is that, imagine you're selling a product in a new market, and you've got 10 people selling it. 2 people are doing really well. Right now, we have the ability to download why they're doing well and to mobilize that a couple of days later. So knowing key decisions would be knowing when to sell product A versus B. this team of players do it much better. We can robotize that. Imagine that. And learning fast. So you as the virtual advisor. So I've got other slides talking about examples and that, but there's going to be no time for questions. Let me throw open the discussion for a couple of questions. Hopefully not to doom and gloom. There's huge opportunity. Just to reinforce the theme, your differentiation is in your experience. Find a way to scale that.
You mentioned about being able to get that expertise and robotize it, and you're doing that from a claims perspective with Suncorp. How can you do that as a small company? Like, what huge cost, I imagine?
Massive, no. So,
And the time.
yeah. So we can. No one's asked me. I haven't ever responded in this way. It will, if you make a key decision. So this is going to put a lot of pressure on Suncorp. If I break down that statement into something that says, I can sell 5 different products, I make the best decision for that client. So the decision is which product to sell the client. I can model that decision probably within 3 hours, start to finish, and there's a robotic version of you. So that's what our technology does now. So access to it, what I would love to see out of our Suncorp relationship is a way to create access, and that's actually being discussed at the moment. It's not a commitment. It's being discussed at the moment, and it's a very innovative approach where I would love to find a way to allow you still to be unique, because you compete with each other. But imagine allowing you to be unique and compete, but scaling. So at the moment, you'll have 50 clients as an example. You can now deal with 5,000 clients, and they can all go in and see just a quick view, which product, A, B, C, D, E. So how do we do it? We can do it within 2-3 hours. Jen out there, if you ask Jen, how long did it take her to build a version of herself? What happens is we create, and again, I'm not wanting to sell you the technology, but we create a relationship between you and a robot where it asks you questions. So it says, okay, based on that, what would you do? All right, that's interesting. So now what would you do now? So it talks to you, and eventually it deciphers the way you think. So you can robotize that 2-3 hours. We built on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, they've got a very important decision around risk. So risk would be, are we in DEFCON 1, 2, 3, 4? They've been sitting with the problem for 2 years, got the team in a room, and I said, all right, talk to the robot. The robot's going to ask you a question, just respond. Within 20 minutes, they'd modeled it. So our objective is to mainstream AI.
So Carl, is that something we're going to make available to the intermediaries, or have we got access to talk to you? Because let's say we're talking about timing, I guess we've got a gun advisor, lovely phone. You're saying that can be done in hours, let's even say that takes weeks. As a small business owner, is that something that we can approach you with?
I'd love for you to create pressure around that discussion. So I can give you my details. You're welcome to speak to me. In an ideal world, you'd have, and it all fits together where there's an ability to create a win-win-win for all parties. You will keep your uniqueness. You have access to a scaling technology. So the pieces are there. So if you want, I'll give you my details. Good.
We've got a microphone down the back here. Might be easier for everybody here.
Sure.
Hi there, thanks, Nick Hakes. I think it might be along the same lines though, because it's a bit hard to hear from the back. It seems large businesses have a competitive advantage because they've got more capital, whereas small businesses don't have enough capital. So how do small businesses take advantage of the opportunity that you've presented?
So I'll just repeat it. From our side, what I drive, there's two ways to answer that. I drive as Merlin, and I don't want to promote Merlin, our name's not even on here, is to find a way for everyone to get access to your technology. In fact, our trajectory over the next couple of years is to give the technology away. So where everyone used to rely on a secretary to write the document, now you've got your own word processor. So we have that ability now. The drive for us in the Suncorp relationship is to try and motivate the powers that be to somehow make this technology available into the intermediary base, because it's going to be better for Suncorp. So those discussions are happening now, but I must, again, just reinforce that it's not a commitment. Those are discussions we're having. So within the next couple of months, we'll definitely have some view on that. What I would encourage you as an intermediary body then is to reach out to whoever the representatives are and say, well, is this technology coming to us, or are you keeping it for yourself, which is, is this coming to us? Can we get to it? And there is a way for you to get to it.
Hi, I was just wondering, do you have any recommendations on the personal productivity front? Should we all be embracing Siri and telling her to order our kids' lunches, or, do the 20 things on our list every day that we kind of still do that really could be automated? I mean, is Siri the answer, or is there other things we just haven't discovered out there?
So Siri's very simplistic. Those are search engines, and that's very simplistic technology. I wouldn't give away, so you're asking the wrong person. I believe in staying as human as possible. I have no Facebook, I have no LinkedIn, I have none of that. I look for discomfort, strangely. So if there's an opportunity to walk somewhere far or do something uncomfortable, I feel I want to be doing that. So to give away all of those things, I'm the wrong person to ask. And the Siri technologies, Bixby's and that are very, very simplistic. So, nice. And your computer being reliable. Are you using Windows or Apple? So here's the advice, go to the other one. So the lady here, if I can just take us, you're going to beat me. Yeah, sorry.
You talked about external threat to industry, and when I think about, and I'm on the general insurance side of things, when I think about how we don't necessarily sell product to our client, we're thinking about their overall risk management strategy and protecting their assets.
Brilliant.
Huge difference between selling a product,
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
right? And my question is, take threat to industry and link the two, and how do you think about that? How do you serve that?
That's wonderful. So have you got half an hour? That is brilliant, because it's another way for you to differentiate. So the reason why you can't do it now, it's too complex. So imagine using technologies to offer a product where you call it a risk umbrella, and you then mobilize 100 top risk experts in different parts of risk of a client, all informing. It is amazing. I've written so much stuff on that. Brilliant. That's the future. I haven't answered your question, sorry. But I like it. So.
I just have an interest one, because you did raise the example of call centres earlier, and a lot of people who have insurance claims inevitably end up in a call centre. If AI has come so far, how come no one has been able to develop anything vaguely like a customer-friendly automated call centre system?
So yes, I think the key things would be around next best action. So something NBA would be deciding when to do a call handoff NBA. We're right now busy with a company called WebHelp, looking at taking top call center agents and knowing what is the next best action. Those are decisions, simple logic around what should I do next with this client. So it's there, it is infantile to an extent. WebHelp's one of the biggest call center technologies in the world, and we've only now recently started with them. So it is coming, next, the call center spaces. Sorry, we run out of time, but...
Thank you so much. A big round of applause for Cal.
Thanks.